Cornel West is one of America's most celebrated thinkers, a philosopher and political activist with a rather unique worldview, but also a very critical, pointed one. West is a peculiar man, both in his philosophy and his public persona. He is charismatic, deeply influenced by the Black church tradition, but doesn't hesitate to attack his intellectual adversaries head-on, even with fiery rhetoric. In West's world, a major opponent has often been the institutional establishment, and he has clashed with it repeatedly. He famously had a dispute with Harvard University, so much so that he departed the institution in 2021 over disagreements about his public activism. Harvard's former president Lawrence Summers once criticized him for neglecting academic duties. That's why West might see some critics as establishment academics, and coming from him, that isn't a compliment. In West's view, an institution that prioritizes its own prestige over social justice isn't teaching real philosophy. It's teaching an official, sanitized philosophy. The university can be the ideological arm of the status quo and of power. A true intellectual can't be validated by that power. If they are, then they're not a true intellectual. West is a rebellious philosopher, a defiant philosopher, but maybe also a philosopher who is frustrated by not being recognized by the institutions he challenges. His personal life has been complex, with public reports of financial struggles and allegations of misconduct, painting a picture of a man whose moral leadership is often contrasted with private challenges. Despite this, he remains a towering figure in American life, admired for his courage and commitment to truth. Cornel West's critique of capitalism isn't just an economic theory, it is a deep moral and spiritual one. The view that capitalism is an unseen system that inherently promotes inequality and exploitation, the damaging core of modern society. For West, the human spirit cannot flourish under its logic. As he explores in his book Race Matters, capitalism saturates every corner of culture, creating a society obsessed with materialism, weakening our collective soul. His critique isn't just about flaws in the system, it points to something fundamentally wrong. The expression of capitalism is a culture of individualism and a commodification of human relationships, and West warns against what he calls free market fundamentalism. For West, the capitalist drive for profit is the inner reality of our society, while the culture of materialism is the outer reality. Using the image of a powerful magnet hidden under a table, the magnet itself is capitalism's core logic, an invisible force. The metal filings on the table's surface arranging themselves in a specific pattern, that is the representation we perceive, expressed by the magnet's pull. The magnet's force is an unseen power shaping them. West believes we can fight this force. We must build what he calls, quote, countervailing forces through democratic socialism and policies like Medicare for all, creating a more just and humane society. The white supremacy Cornel West talks about isn't just a historical relic or the overt actions of bigots. It's a deep structuring force, an invisible pressure that continues to define everyday life in America. It's what West, in his book Race Matters, identifies as a source of the existential angst felt by Black Americans. For West, the ultimate threat isn't simply oppression or exploitation. The major enemy of Black survival is the nihilistic threat, the loss of hope and absence of meaning. This perspective shows that addressing racial inequality requires more than policy changes. It demands a profound cultural and spiritual transformation. West's approach is nuanced. He rejects both environmental determinism, which blames everything on external factors, and victim blaming, which holds individuals solely responsible. He calls for a balance that recognizes both structural oppression and personal agency. As West said in a public lecture, "You work through race, you don't deny race." It's the difference between being colorblind and love-struck. If I love you, I don't need to eliminate your whiteness. If you love me, you don't need to eliminate my blackness. You embrace humanity. This perfectly captures his vision of a justice built not on erasing difference, but on unity and love. West offers a metaphor: jazz freedom fighting. Think of a jazz ensemble. It's improvisational, collaborative, and built on accountable structures that encourage critical exchange. This symbolizes a dynamic and inclusive form of resistance deeply rooted in the lived struggle for racial justice. If Cornel West is a philosopher and academic, why get so involved in political activism? It's the idea that theory has to be put into action. West's activism comes directly from his prophetic tradition, which for him calls for speaking truth to power and fighting for those on the margins. So what does this look like in the real world? His vocal support for things like Medicare for all, more public housing, and serious climate action. Who is he fighting against? He criticizes both parties. He says the Democrats are too tied to corporate money, and the Republicans push policies that hurt the poor and working people. But why take it to the next level and run for president in 2024? West's answer was an independent campaign meant to embody his ideas of justice, truth, and love. Everything from cutting the military budget to tackling systemic inequality was a part of it. But this move came with its own problems, from accepting support from Republican allies to facing criticism for some of his associations. The campaign polled below 1%, fell into debt, and by August 2024, he had stopped actively campaigning. Even so, this run was the ultimate symbol of his commitment to challenging the status quo. If you're pulling from traditions that seem totally incompatible, mixing Christianity with Marxism, isn't Cornel West just contradicting himself by trying to smash together all these different ideas into one single framework? Well, not exactly. Let me use a different word instead of mixing. Synthesis. His thought is a synthesis of these powerful streams. He draws heavily from Christianity, especially the Black church tradition, with its focus on prophecy and justice. But he also brings in a Marxist analysis of class struggle, even while calling himself a non-Marxist socialist, and seeing where those two worldviews just can't be reconciled. So what does West know about society? He knows it has deep problems. Now, if we ask, how do we fix it? Well, that's where things get more complicated. You might be tempted to say, we need spiritual answers, or no, we need economic answers. But why these specific solutions? Why not just one? We know that we need change, but we don't know what kind of change can address the whole person. And to that what, West has an answer: prophetic pragmatism. This is his synthesis. He brings in pragmatism, which is all about practical solutions and democratic experiments, and transcendentalism's search for spiritual truths. Everything he critiques comes from this holistic view. So, if we live in a democracy, if we all believe in basic equality, then what are we supposed to do with this massive concentration of wealth in the hands of a few? For Cornel West, this isn't just an economic problem, it's a moral one. This kind of inequality is a moral failure of the entire system, and we, as human beings, are living within that failure. As he has said, we can't have a democracy with this kind of grotesque inequality, with this kind of obscene wealth at the top and poverty at the bottom. So what does our system say about this? It says we need to create wealth. That's the most basic thing about our economy. Businesses create products, people work, and profits are made. Now, if we ask the question, why does that wealth get so stuck at the top? Well, that's where things get more complicated. You might be tempted to say, that's just how the system works. We designed a system to maximize profit, and it's doing exactly that. But why was it designed this way? Why prioritize profit over people? Why is the well-being of the working class and the poor not the primary goal? To that why, Cornel West has an answer: a need for systemic change. It is this moral need that makes him advocate for a total shift. Everything that exists in our economy should serve human dignity first. This is why he's inspired by figures like Martin Luther King Jr. and supports big ideas like universal health care, affordable housing, a wealth tax, and forgiving student debt. It's not just about changing a few policies, but about a deep cultural shift toward valuing people over profit, a powerful call for true equality.